Today on Locked On Red Wings, we bring on Max Bultman of The Athletic to break down a prospect profile on Austrian center Marco Kaspar.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a producer over at 97 The Ticket, while Scotty is host at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today, back-to-back episodes, big shoes to fill, Max. You're coming on a day after Prashanth was on, and Max Bultman, Detroit Red Wings beat writer for The Athletic. First of all, Max, how you doing? How are things? How excited are you to be here on a scale of 1 to 10, and why is it 10?
Well, it's got to be a 10, except for there's no chance I can fill Prashanth's shoes, so that's always intimidating. That's nobody can.
He came in a tank top. Let me tell you, he rolled up in a chest hair and all, just tank top in it.
He probably had just got. I don't know if people know this, that Prashanth boxes. So
really,
yeah. So he probably had just gotten done with boxing.
He said that it was like over 100 degrees in North Carolina, so he's just like, I'm not even unapologetically, man. I got to rock this tank top.
Well,
Detroit Tigers tank top.
There's that too. Yeah, there's that too.
A little fun fact: Scotty or me and Prashanth were rocking more Detroit Tigers gear than the host of Locked On Tigers on yesterday's episode.
Wow.
So
I know.
Come to your own conclusions on that one.
Maybe they're just so worn down because it's been a little bit of a rough go for them. Not a little bit. It's been an extremely rough go for them.
That's my excuse. I'm that tired of them. Yes, it's been a rough.
It's
one.
only 60 games. They got another 100 to turn it around. Come on. Now.
Yeah, and I've done a show after all 60 games, Brian. Yeah.
and you're pretty encouraged after the first 60 that's coming.
Oh. How could you not be, you know?
Riley Green's going to get called up, and he's going to hit 50 bombs here on out, and the Tigers are going to make the playoffs. Division winners, I'm calling it now. That's the reality.
Let's see it.
You have that on air now. We don't. So there you go.
All right. Max, we have you on today to help us break down another prospect profile. I believe this is our fourth one. And we kind of been letting our guests choose the guy that they want to break down just because everyone's got the guy that they seem to like. And you have a few guys you like, but you came to the table with Marco Kaspar. And I said, hell yeah, 6'2" center out of, the SHL. I played for, I'm going to try and pronounce this properly, Rogle. I know there's one time I talked to, I don't want to sound the alarm, but I spoke to Hakan Anderson at LCA one time. He came in to buy some stuff. And I was like, okay, how do I pronounce it? And he tried to walk me through it. I couldn't get there. I couldn't do it.
It's the two dots over the O that'll get you. But I say it Rogle. So, but I think it's probably Rogle.
I think you were close. I think that's almost how he pronounced it. But anyways, back on topic. Marco Kaspar, 18-year-old out of Austria, Austrian-born, 6'2", 187 pounds, left-handed shot. He is a center, and this past season he started. Correct me if I'm wrong. He started out with the U20 team. And then made his jump to the SHL professional team where he had 11 points in 46 games, and then in the playoffs, 6 points in 13 games.
Not quite that linear. Like he was a full-timer for the SHL team. It's just the way that this is one of the beautiful things of the way Swedish hockey is structured is it's all one organization. So if it's a long week and you want to send your guy, your 17, 18-year-old down to play with the juniors, you can do that. So he played I don't know exactly whether that was a circumstance or whether they sent him down mid-season kind of thing, but I think he was pretty wire to wire, like starting with like the Champions League in the late summer. I'm pretty sure he was wire to wire with him.
Yeah, and so like you went over to Sweden at one point during the season. Was this one of the players that you got a chance to see?
That's my biggest regret is that I went to Ängelholm, which is where Rogle is, but I went on an off day because I scheduled my trip around the Frölunda kids that the Red Wings have, and
Makes sense.
Like they play on the same days in that league. And so what I should have done is I should have skipped the middle Frölunda game and gone to the Rogle game. I would have been able to see Wallander. I would have been able to see Casper. I think that would have been very smart of me. Unfortunately, I'm not very smart and I didn't do that. So I was in his arena, but he wasn't on the ice. He wasn't there. So
I don't think anyone can fault you for wanting to watch three Frölunda games though, and just watch Simon Edvinsson at work. I don't think anyone can blame you there.
No, it was good. It was worth it. I saw a lot of good stuff, but if you were going to redo that trip, that's the number one. That's where you'd start, right?
Fair enough.
So this is the guy that you wanted to come on and talk about, a guy who's projected to be outside the top 10 on a lot of boards, but you have him, and you actually posted an article about it on the 13th, which would have been Monday, as we record this on Tuesday evening, about making the case for Marco Kaspar at number 8. Kind of give us, I guess, in the end, give us a little bit of a synopsis. What do you like out of Marco Kaspar that would make the Red Wings, I won't say reach, but go up there and grab a guy that maybe most people aren't expecting to go in the top 10?
Well, I guess first of all, I'd say like our Corey Pronman, one of our prospectors, has him 9th, right? And so I don't think it's as crazy of a reach. Like I personally think Kasper will go top 12 to 13, my guess, and I really feel like he's a really strong candidate for the Red Wings, right there at 8. That's probably the start of his range, but you never know. And when you have a 6'1" center who skates the way that he does, who competes the way that he does, NHL teams are going to like that. I can understand, if you want to, we can skip ahead a little bit to what the questions will be, is like what's his point production going to look like in the NHL? I get that, but I think there's a lot of really good elements. Like, and I think he is a skilled player. I think there's going to be offense. I think he's already started to demonstrate offense in the SHL playoffs, and he had a really nice assist at the World Championships against Team USA. It's one of the perils of these guys who in their draft year play against men as professionals, is that they're not going to put up the 60, 70, 80, 90 point numbers that you're going to find in the North American junior leagues. But I think if you just look at the tools there, you are going to see maybe not dynamic offense, but plenty of translatable offensive skills in just a really complete, well-rounded, in my opinion, package.
He's played a lot of center clearly. Is there any like winger potential there? Is like the size maybe like he's going to be a center, whether anybody likes it or not, or they're going to try every possible way they can to make sure he stays a center, I guess?
He played on the wing this year, but I think that's more of like that tends to be kind of how you break in young centers to pro hockey, right? Yeah. Like that's kind of what Larkin did. I think he's a center. I'm sure you could find people who say, hey, play him on the wing, whatever. And it's obviously, there's very few like slam dunk, no doubt centers in the world, but I see him that way. I think my expectation is he will play at least some center in Rogle next year, and I see him that. I think he was that on his way up, so that's what I see him as. Obviously, I think anyone you could probably find some potential that they switch to the wing though.
So Red Wings fans have been kind of spoiled in a way by a lot of our recent top 10 draft picks. Obviously, Moritz Seider did take a couple years. COVID was a factor in that for him to get here, but when he got here, he was great. Lucas Raymond spent he got drafted in 19. He made his debut in 2021. Simon Edvinsson, D+ 1 year, looked fantastic. He was a finalist for Rookie of the Year over in the SHL. What kind of timeline do you think a guy like Marco Kaspar would have compared to guys like that? Obviously taken a lot later in the draft than, Seider was taken 6th overall, but then some of these guys. But what kind of timeline do you think that a guy like Marco Kaspar would have to make it to the NHL level? Would he be a guy that just takes a little bit longer?
I don't know. I think his game is pretty projected. Like that's the fact that he's playing with pros already would give you some confidence. I'm not saying it's like 1 year and then he's in, but it's at least possible. Like, I think 1 or 2 more years outside the NHL. And I would think by, the start of that, I guess it'd be the 24-25 season. Probably I would feel pretty good about it, but it certainly could be sooner. And you never know, but it's just all development. To me, once you're already playing with pros, you've started to make the biggest leap. And then from there, the SHL and the AHL are different leagues. The NHL and the AHL are different leagues, but the core of, how to play with and against men, I think is a big one.
You not want to go to an ad break here? No.
Oh, we can. I was curious if you had another one. No. Smooth segue, guys.
Do, but
Lockdown Red Wings as professionals. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you ever need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from your chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck right locked down in their How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts you will ever need. RockAuto.com. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are joined by Max Bultman, the Detroit Red Wings beat writer for The Athletic, and he is breaking down the profile of Marco Kaspar with us, who played this past year with Rogle. I'm not going to get that by the end of the episode. I just know I'm not. Of the SHL.
It's not the long sound. Rogle.
Rogle.
I think that's pretty close.
Rogle. It's not going to
You don't
happen.
have to lie to him, man. No, that was terrible, bro.
Thanks, Scotty. Scotty keeps me humble. He brings me down to earth. Max, we talked a lot about what he brings to the table, but what are some areas you think that Marco Kaspar has to improve on as far as being a player?
Well, I think you'd like to see kind of the hands probably pop a bit more and just a little bit more of the dynamic offense. I will say one of the comments that stood out to me in my making the case for article was a comment from the GM there in Ängelholm. And he said, one thing that he's really good at is wanting to get better, knowing how to get better, that his willingness and ability to improve is really strong. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, but that to me is a skill, right? Being able to get better is a skill. It's not just, you're fixed at where you at and you're on this one trajectory until the end of your career. And if that's the case, hey, maybe he can kind of allay that concern. But right now, if you were going to say what's the weakness, it's I don't know what the point totals are going to look like. My counter to that, and again, the point of these articles is to make the case for. So they always kind of they raise the question and they usually give you some optimism for why that could work out. In my case, that would probably be, hey, let's look at the number 2 center on the team that is going for a three-peat right now, and that's Anthony Cirelli. What's his career high? 44, 45 points. I don't know that you need to have a 70-point guy as long as they're a really well-rounded, really complete player. Now, Cirelli's, to me, a future Selke winner. If Marco Kaspar's not a future Selke winner, then you're going to want, obviously, a little more production as the trade-off there. But these are all kind of the conversations that you're going to have. I just think he's a really well-rounded, good hockey player, and I think he's going to really help a team win with how hard he plays, with how fast he can play, and the fact that, yes, he does have skill, even if it's not on the level of a Logan Cooley, for example, who I'm sure will be the dream pick. If you're Detroit, there's no chance he's getting to them at 8, but something like that. I just think he's a really complete player.
So, I mean, with all of that you just talked about, the defensive end then as a center, I mean, we heard it a lot in the Blashill era especially, but I think just as a whole, we're looking for a lot more two-way, one end to one end kind of guys. And do you think that he falls under that bill then?
Yeah, I do. I think every team's looking for those kind of guys. I think you look at the playoffs right now, yes, Colorado is this crazy offensive team, but you can't tell me Nathan McKinnon and Nazem Kadri aren't two-way players, right? Those guys are full ice. That's what it takes to win in the NHL. You can't just get by on, fly in the zone and hoping somebody hits you with a stretch pass and finishing it, and you watch Connor McDavid in these playoffs. And I think you saw a new level of commitment to playing the full game, full ice game from him. Obviously didn't always look the most natural when he was having to defend. That guy's the guy who a lot of his best defensive attributes are just how good he can be on the puck, how good he can help force turnovers in the offensive zone. But any level of winning in the NHL takes you to be able to play a complete game.
Yeah, so when it comes to Marco Kaspar, totally blanked on his name there for a second. You said it in your article here, as I have it up right next to me, when referring to him as a comparable, not a comparable, but hoping to get somebody like Anthony Cirelli, you mentioned that he is helped by the fact that he's got great teammates around him, like Braden Point, Steven Stamkos, and a complete roster. Do you see Marco Kaspar as more of a support piece for a core, or part of a core, couldn't be a part of the core itself?
Do you not think Anthony Cirelli is part of the core in Tampa?
I do. I'm raising the question.
Well, I mean, I get it. It's fair. I don't see him as a superstar, if that's what you mean, right?
Yes.
I don't see him as a Lucas Raymond level, Dylan Larkin level player, but I don't think your core is only restricted to your superstars. I would put Cirelli as a core piece in Tampa, it's a number. I project him as a number 2 center, I guess is the way to say it, right? I don't think he's going to be Dylan Larkin, but I think he can be your number 2 center, and I think he can be a really important piece of what you do. And, obviously, like, we're focusing in on Casper here. I don't want to make it seem like I think this is the only candidate in the world, right? Like, I think Frank Nazar can check a lot of these boxes too. And I know that's a guy you guys did in depth with Prashant, and that's for good reason. Like, that, he's a really good player, and he probably has a little more of that offensive sizzle to his game, that at least that he's shown so far. And again, you can come back to how much of it is because Nazar played against juniors and college at the NTDP. They do a good job with that, versus Kasper against pros. You can come back to that, but the reality is, I'd say from what I've seen so far, Nazar's made a few more kind of those high-end plays. But he's a 5'10 center. Kasper's a 6'1 center. I think, when I look at how they kind of they're both good competitive kids. They both play a direct style, all that stuff. But I have seen Kasper really, really win battles against pros, and that goes a long way with me. So again, like, superstar, I don't think so, but I don't think that precludes you from being a core piece, a big piece of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's totally. And like, looking at offensively, we've talked this whole time about maybe his point totals won't be so high, whatever. Like, what are his best strengths and attributes then on the offensive side that could, as he goes forward, could continue to shine through?
Well, it's ability to win battles, win pucks, win around the net, finish around the net. He's not afraid to take a puck hard to the net. He's very fast. I think his skating gets a little underrated. And he does have puck skill. Like, he's shown them. I feel like that gets glossed over because the competitive traits and the skating are probably kind of the bigger things. But it's not like this guy can't handle the puck. We're not talking about somebody with stone hands here, right? Like, he's a well-rounded player. It's just, is it dynamic, right? And
yes.
That's, I get it. We're talking about the top 10. People want the sexiest possible package there, but to me, like, it's the sum of all the parts. And when I look at the sum of all the parts, there is going to be offense, because he can skate the puck to the net. He can shoot the puck. He can, carry the puck hard and get it to a good angle. He can tip pucks. He had a nice highlight this year where he kind of had a between the legs net front goal, a la kind of what Elmer Soderblom did at the World Juniors a couple of years ago. Like, this is not a player who you're just relying on to tip pucks and bang rebounds, but the fact that he can do all that stuff is a good thing, not a bad thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, let's get away from Marco Kaspar a little bit then, as a whole, like, still kind of generally about that 8th overall pick though. If you're like Steve Yzerman, I asked Prashant the same thing yesterday. If you were Steve Yzerman and you're looking at that 8th overall pick, are you prioritizing? And I know a lot of philosophies generally are you take the best player available, and generally that works out. But do you think that the Red Wings need to have maybe an increased focus on the forward group? They've had a focus on defense the last few years, getting Wallander early in the second round, Simon Edvinsson, Moritz Seider. Obviously, they took Lucas Raymond in 2019, or 2020 draft, I believe it was. Yes. Okay. I'm trying to remember my years in my head. But do you think the Red Wings need to have an increased focus on that 2C role? Because the forward depth is an issue that needs to be addressed as well.
Yes, I do. I mean, my kind of rule of thumb I think that the best player available versus need argument that happens every single year is kind of a fake argument. Like, it's just not really honest, because it's oversimplified on both ends, right? Like, the best player can mean a lot of different things. And to me, I would say there is a value question there that makes that really, that turns it on its head, and I think makes it more practical. But my main thing is, like, you should care what positions your farm system lacks. That matters, right? Mm-hmm. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't drop like a whole tier. Like, if I could get a first pair defenseman, for example, I would do that over the center, right? And I don't think that's going to happen, but it could, right? Like, if one of those top D, Juracek or Nemitz drops, I don't think that's going to happen. That would be a situation where you would say, well, it would have been great to get the 2C, but this is a top pair D. We got to do it. That's so valuable, right? To me, centers are more valuable than wingers, because if you need a top 6 winger at any time, you can trade for one, you can sign one. They will be available to you on every available market, right? It may not be the exact guy you're envisioning, but you can get a guy who can fill that role really well. It's going to cost money, or it's going to cost assets, but you can get them. If you wanted to go find a top line center, maybe a top 6 center, but like ideally a top line center, good luck. I mean, This year on the free agent market, I think there's probably 2 second line centers realistically available, and we'll see what happens with like an Evgeny Malkin, obviously. But Andrew Kopp and Vincent Trocheck, pretty much the 2 C's. And Andrew Kopp may extend to New York before it even gets to free agency.
Right.
And then you got one, and you're in a bidding war. And are you going to go 5 years, 6 years? You're going to be asked to make these decisions on a guy when he may be the only one available. There's just not many centers who become available to you as a GM. And so to me, if you're in a position to draft a guy who you think is going to be that, you should do it, because that's the more valuable pick. Even if you think the other guy might score a few more points, the cost of replacing a comparable player, or replacing him with a comparable player in free agency or trade, is just going to be less than it would be for a second line center, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good stuff too. Because you're completely right. It's worst case scenario too. You draft a center that doesn't look like he can be a center. There's a potential there to also transition them to wing. Now, it's not always a 1-for-1 thing, but it's a lot easier to transition a center to a wing than a wing to a center. You just mentioned it in the first segment, that you saw that Marco Kaspar was playing wing this year in the SHL as part of his developmental process. So a lot of these guys go through phases where they play wing before they play center. So it's easy to go from center to wing, but you can't really draft a wing and have them transition to center. So I really like that philosophy there. I got to get to another read here, but when we come back, I have one more question about the draft as a whole, and then we'll move into some more just like generic off-season stuff, because I want to get your opinion on some of it. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the Stanley Cup Final, Major League Baseball, and of course, the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Scotty, before I ask this final question, did you have anything else you want to ask about the draft, the number 8 overall pick?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I had, and we kind of talked about it asked a few different people, but when you talk about value like that, do you think that there is then potential value in moving, I guess, up or down? I guess in my head I was thinking back, but I mean, I guess there's a reality where moving up could be the best value too. Do you think that in this draft that there's that there's potentially better value doing one of those 2 things than staying at 8?
I don't know. I mean, like, obviously it always just depends on the situation,
For
like
sure.
it's, if you're, if you were the Red Wings and you said, okay, yeah, you'd probably find a center better, higher in the draft, but it's going to cost you money to move
Right.
up. You know what I mean? And yeah, you could pick up an extra pick or 2 and move back, and get more dart throws. And I've had that conversation with friends, and very smart friends. And I see the logic in that too. My counter has been and would be, do the Red Wings need more depth, or do they need more upper half of the lineup pieces? And are you more likely to find an upper lineup piece earlier, or with the extra, moving back and getting an extra dart throw, but knowing that extra dart throw comes in the second round where you're inherently unlikely to find that guy? So,
right. It's all dart throws, and no matter what, versus right. For sure.
And we see historically teams typically decide, if they're in the top 10, I'm just going to make my pick. It just doesn't really happen. You don't really see much trading up within the top 10, but is there value to be had one way or the other? It just depends on what the circumstances. I would think the play is to just stay put, but if the right thing comes along, you could think about it, obviously.
Well, and when I spoke with Jake Rivard this past week on Friday, one of the things he mentioned as like a big tipping point for what the Red Wings do this offseason is who's going to be their head coach. I mean, the head coach is going to have an impact on the direction this team takes. And so that leads me to my next question, which is away from the draft, but just offseason oriented. Out of the head coaching candidates, we just saw Bruce Cassidy today as we record this on Tuesday. We saw Bruce Cassidy go to the Vegas Golden Knights. He was on my short list of guys I wanted to see the Red Wings bring in. I understand why I went to Vegas. Not that I ever thought it was a very, high chance that he was going to come here. But is there anyone that you're necessarily stuck on that you'd love to see behind the bench of the Detroit Red Wings, or do you have somebody you think might be a little bit of a dark horse?
Not really. I think that both Trotz and Cassidy, would have been kind of the best case scenarios where they're proven winners, that they can help fix the team defense, and you kind of know based on their track record exactly how they're going to do it, what that's going to look like. Obviously Cassidy now off the board. Trotz, it just doesn't seem that likely that he would, with the teams available, pick Detroit. So I don't think that it'll ultimately be that direction. The easiest guess is to guess that he's going to pull from the Tampa tree, right? Whether that's an existing assistant from the Tampa bench, Derek Lalonde or Jeff Halpern, or if he's going to go to the guy who's running their AHL program, Benoit Gru. And I think any of those would be, pretty reasonable candidates. And I think, he's talked about liking familiarity, not trying to have it color his whole search. I think that's relevant. But I also think, I would not, there's nothing he's going to do that's going to shock me. But I think the thing that would surprise me the least is just pulling from the Tampa tree, because it's what he knows. And in a lot of cases, he's hired those people once already to those jobs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. I think a little peek behind the curtain, folks, before we even started, I was talking to Max off the air about how, like, even though I want Trotz and I want Cassidy, like same as you, they're the best two fits. They're the guys who have the best proven track record. I have this gut feeling, I really do, that it's going to end up being Derek Lalonde of Tampa Bay. It was one of Stevie's last hires in Tampa before he stepped down as their general manager. And, like you said, that familiarity, that success in Tampa, it just seems to make sense. What do you feel, though? And I got to gauge you on this. So BetOnline posted their odds for head coach last week, and Scotty and I talked about it. With plus 3,300 odds, BetOnline had listed as the next head coach, and he's like 10th on the list. He wasn't high. Patrick Roy.
I mean, Patrick Roy has been coaching the Quebec Ramparts in the QMJHL. That's a good team. I mean, I realize it would be in terms of the
Optics.
Yeah, in terms of the history, the rivalry, all that, like that obviously would be kind of wild to see, but he's not making this hire based on old rivalries, right? Like whoever he hires as coach is because he thinks that team is going to, or that coach, is going to help the Red Wings. And, Patrick Roy has been coaching a really good QMJHL team. I don't think it's crazy to see him in that picture. Would it be my first guess? No, but those are pretty long odds anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there was a very pragmatic and professional answer, Max. I was trying to get under your skin a little bit there with that question, and you just took it like a pro.
Well,
I commend you for that one.
I think it's a legitimate option. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What was crazy to me, too, is when we were talking about it, is they didn't even list, and not that Scotty and I want John Tortorella. We're both kind of like, stay away from that. But Tortorella wasn't given any odds on that list. The fact that Patrick Roy had better odds than Tortorella kind of surprised me, although I know Tortorella has mild success with Columbus when he was there. I mean, they made the playoffs. They won their first ever playoff round when he was there. But that was a little wild to me that a coach that hasn't coached in the NHL in a few years had better odds than a guy who's, I guess, technically Tortorella hasn't in a couple of years either. But with Patrick Roy, it's been 5 years at least since he's been in the league. It's been quite a minute. So we were of the belief that when we saw it was like, oh, they're just trying to get a reaction from Red Wings fans so it spreads on social media.
Well, you know what? Yzerman's two coaching hires in Tampa were Guy Boucher and John Cooper, and neither of them were I don't think either of them had any NHL coaching.
No, they didn't. You're spot on.
At that time. So, it wouldn't be bucking a trend for him to, I mean, obviously junior league's a little different than the AHL, but Roy has coached in the NHL before.
Yep.
So
Colorado, and he won a Jack Adams there too, right?
I don't know about that, but I don't know. I wasn't following the league that closely at that time, but I do know he coached in the NHL.
But yeah.
The other thing with that BetOnline list too, they had Sergey at like the highest odds.
The most likely?
Yeah.
It's like another one, right? Like it sounds like you're going down this like instigative thing, but it to like, oh, okay, yeah, it's gonna be Fedorov, okay, sure. But Fedorov just won the KHL as head coach. Like that's people would tell you that that's the second or third best league in the world, and he was the head coach of the winning team there. So it might seem like they're trying to instigate, but I don't think it's an unreasonable option. Yzerman's hired a lot of people that he played with to various very important jobs.
Oh yeah, we just saw Nicholas Lidstrom this past year.
Yeah,
right. And Chris Draper was the director of amateur. Pat Verbeek was the assistant GM. Like it wouldn't be shocking to me in any way. Maybe not. I wouldn't put it the most likely odds.
Right, that's what we said.
Wouldn't put it that far down the board. I'd put it, frankly, probably above Patrick Waugh.
I got nervous, but 2013, 2014. But one last question before we let you go. There's rumors circulating that David Pastrnak may want out of Boston, and that Alex DeBrincat of Chicago, they might move on from him as they try and move into a full-scale rebuild. Are those, do you think, obviously Red Wings fans would love to have them. They're 40-goal scorers. I believe Pastrnak won the Richard a couple years ago as well. These guys are legitimate scoring threats. But do you think that it is in the cards for the Red Wings to make that type of aggressive move at this point in the rebuild?
No, I don't think that, the Red Wings are in a position yet to trade the kind of assets it would take to get either of those two guys. To say nothing of the fact that both of them are wingers, just like we talked about, right? Like if you're going to spend your premium assets, spend them on centers and defensemen. Alex DeBrincat's a hell of a player. And he's scored a lot of goals in the NHL, and he's going to continue to. But for what I assume it's going to cost to pry a guy like that away from Chicago, you're going to have to give up really meaningful. You're not like 8th overall, I don't think would get it done. Like you're already packaging 8th overall with another really, really good asset or two. Look at what Chicago got for Brandon Hagel, right? So to me, that just doesn't make sense for where the Red Wings are. You're filling one hole and you're opening two more. So I don't think that makes sense for them.
When we did a whole episode, or about 2 segments of a whole episode on Pastrnak, and that's what we said. It's like 8th overall, and then one of your blue chippers, one of your young guys that you want to build your core, your team around is going to cost you for a guy like David Pastrnak who's 26. It's just, it didn't. We were of the same sentiment where it'd be fun, it'd be sexy, but it didn't really seem practical. So, anyways, Max, thanks for coming on. This was a great talk.
You.
Thanks for breaking down Marco Kaspar with us and then entertaining our other hypothetical questions as well. Where can people find you? Where can they read your stuff? The whole shebang.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
We're on theathletic.com. You can find me on Twitter at @m_Bultman. But no, I appreciate it. And anything people want to read or subscribe, we're obviously always
subscribe to The Athletic, man. For real. Golly, for real.
It's great stuff. And again, seriously, thank you for coming on, because we like having people who are in the know. We'll say in the know when it comes to the Red Wings. Just like you're really
as much as anyone can be. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
for real.
Trying to stroke your ego too much here, but your articles are always spot on. Your presence on Twitter is very accurate. It's just, your stuff, so it's always really nice to have somebody like you on and help us break down. Somebody like Marco Kaspar, who, covering the Red Wings and doing a 30-minute podcast every day, we haven't gotten to see a whole bunch of. So we appreciate you coming on and doing that with us.
My pleasure. Check out the video. I mean, these guys are all interesting players, and there's good stuff out there that you can find to kind of see their games. So, but it's my pleasure, and we'll talk to you both soon.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every single day. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Scotty and I will be back with you guys tomorrow for a Thursday edition. As again, I have to think in my head, what day is it? This week's been a blur for me. But regardless, same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.